Singapore time zone. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock today, and yeah, we're going live now. Our usual Thursday session, 8 p.m. Singapore time. So this is going to be our fifth webinar session. Um, I'm really not sure who's going to join in, but so far the response has been good. So for those of you who have been joining in, listening to the talks, maybe not all the way through, maybe just for the first few minutes. I thank you. Thank you for joining. I appreciate your time. And like I mentioned before, the whole purpose of doing this webinar session, it's AhaSlides is a very useful tool, right? And what we want to do is we want to um, share how you can effectively use the tool as an interactive presentation. This concept about interactive presentation, it's sort of like new. It's familiar, but I think the ways to use it, it's quite new. So that's what I'm here for. I just want to show, basically I work with a lot of customers. I get to know about the use cases, and I find that some of these use cases are very, how do you say, useful to be shared around so that other people can benefit from it, right? So my whole purpose of doing this webinar is so that for those of you who are tuning in, the takeaway is that you can hopefully find a better use for our tool, right? Um, so as usual, our slides is a tool to help you engage better for meetings, for classrooms, and and if you're interested to join in today's topic, here is the conversation, right? So it's today is the fifth webinar, so ahaslides.com/ahaweb5. Now, um, today I'm going to talk about healthcare. So, quick backstory. When I was like 10 years ago, I was in the healthcare industry. Part of my job involves reforming the healthcare industry in Singapore. Um, I was part of the, how do you say, the national hospital in Singapore, and I work with a lot of doctors, nurses, and my job was to reform, uh, not big ways, but small little ways that would improve the healthcare sector in Singapore, or rather in that hospital, right? Back then, I didn't have AHA slides, so a lot of it was done through presentation, and we had to convince a lot of stakeholders on why certain things are important and why certain things are important. So today, I want to touch on how AHA slides can help you in the healthcare industry. So to be specific, I'm not going to talk about medical improvements. I'm not talking about processes. I'm just going to talk about how AHA slides could possibly be helpful for you in the healthcare industry, especially for the operations. Just to give a quick sort of like overview of the healthcare around the world. So typically they would have this structure where there is a medical sector and then there is the operation sector. So I was part of the operations, and my job was to make the daily operations of the medical practitioners, that's the doctors and nurses, better. And that includes improving the customer experience, the processes, etc., etc. So today specifically, I just want to share how AHA slides can be useful for healthcare, right? And the one key thing here in a lot of healthcare industry is that training is very important, um, and whether you are a nurse or a physiotherapist or a therapy, not necessarily just physio, a therapist, whether you're a nurse, and if you're a doctor, there is this continual need to go for trainings and improve and to be updated with advancement in medical technology, right? So I've seen some medical practitioners around the world, especially in the US side, where there are a lot of ongoing trainings, and I thought this would be a good topic to talk about and share with a more global audience, right? So, um, why would a healthcare industry need a lot of training? So these are the top three points. There's a lot more. There's like at least 11 points of why continuous training, and training in a broader sense, right? So it's not like the usual where you have to go for session, etc., etc. Every week there are improvements in the medical sector. So take for example, this was 10 years back. What I learned was that you know prior to this, um, so before the Mayo Clinic found out about this, before surgeries, what would happen is surgeons would actually shave the area, and they would shave to the skin. So they would use a razor blade and shave. Um, and uh, what happened was there was a lot of studies that showed that the the mortality rate for surgeries back then was pretty high, and the risk often happens after the surgery, not during the surgery itself. And there were a lot of studies that showed this. And what so the summary is that um, shaving to the skin increases micro cuts on the skin, right? So you know, these micro cuts, it's very, how do you say, it's very it's a good medium, right, for bacteria post surgery to reside in, and that causes the main cut where the deeper cut is to be susceptible to infection, right? So this is just a quick backstory about how Mayo Clinics found this, and then they published it out. And soon after, doctors had to disseminate this information, and they what they do now is they just use a clipper and they clip the hair. They don't actually shave to the skin, they just clip so that it's easier for you to make an incision, right? So these are things that happens on a weekly or monthly basis, right? There are continuous improvements to our medical healthcare industry, whether it's the way you deliver your drug doses, whether it's the way you keep your drug doses, etc., etc. So there's always a concern. So the top one, which is patient safety and care quality, is extremely important. So there are a lot of dissemination about this information about how nurses and doctors can ensure that the patient safety it's maintained and improved over time. Um, and this is typically done on usually a PowerPoint slide is disseminated across, and sometimes is disseminated asynchronous. So basically, it will just be shared as a memo, and and nurses on their free times they will read about it, they'll keep up, and they might have a few group session where they say, okay, this is the case, let's do this, and so on and so forth. So these are the top three key points, right? So keeping up with advancements, reduce medical errors, and so on and so forth. So training is one of the key aspect about healthcare. And here in AhaSlides, I just want to show you a couple of ways where this can be extremely useful for the medical healthcare professionals. So this training, this term training, in the broader sense, it doesn't have to be like you come into a workshop and you attend a class and the 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 trainer is in front of you and it's a serious session, right? It could be in a team format, right? So it could be just the three of you, and then the memo has come in, and the managers want to ensure that everyone is kept in the loop and everyone is aware of the new compliance or the new workflow, right? So this training in the broader sense could be anything. Could be your team training, could be just a sort of like a education session or mini session, but it could also be a proper workshop, right? So so this is how AhaSlides can be extremely important or useful for your training session. Now we have these slide types. It's called the slider slide types. And what it does is, sometimes when you have like a question, and this you have like a couple of questions, and when you ask these questions one by one, right? So let's say in this case, how would you rate our customer clinic service? And you do it as a poll. um, you would be able to see how everyone feels about customer clinic service. But what if you wanted a way where you could rate the customer clinic service and also the ward customer service? So this slide type allows you to be able to get sensors across multiple topics and see the bigger picture altogether. So in this case, just to give a bit of context, the customer service is rated 4 out of 10, for example, and the ward service is rated 5 out of 10. All right, and now you can see both on the same chart, and you can see, okay, the ward service is actually better than the customer service. Why is this so? And this sort of like creates a better point of discussion, right? You can see everything as a whole. So this is something I would highly recommend, and you could use it in a number of ways. It could be, should our processes be improved? How do you rate our processes, for example? It could be an internal team reflection. So if you are new to AhaSlides, you can check the slide types, and then you can use the sliders. This is great. The other thing I also want to share, and this could be something that is done asynchronous. So let's say you have a memo, and the memo says, let's say, simple question: why is training important for healthcare? And it's just a memo, right? And you could be one slide that explains why this is important. Um, and then you could sort of like reinforce the learning. The whole idea is not to say if anyone is right or wrong, but the whole idea is to reinforce the learning, because this is to switch your audience, or your what do you call it, your staff, whether it's nurses, whether it's the clinic side, whether it's doctors, to become a bit more active learner. So let's say this is a 2 slides, right? The first one, it shares why is training important for healthcare. Number one reason: patient safety, keeping up with advancements, and reduce medical errors, right? And then you throw in some random answer like developing charismatic practitioners. And so now, when the user goes through asynchronous, that means they are going through, they read, and then they'll be like participating. And if you join in now, so if you go to ahaslides.com/ahaweb5, you would be able to participate. Now what this does, it's instead of like a memo, it allows your reader to become active learners now. So they have to think, what did I just read the slide before? And they click the right answer, and this reinforce the learnings, right? So the whole purpose of a poll, it's not just for fun. It's not just to have an interactive session, but I would highly recommend using a poll for training purposes, to be a method to reinforce learning, or to convert passive listening to become active learning, right? And it gets, how do you say, it gets reinforced in the reader's mind better, and it lasts longer, and then therefore be more applicable when they face certain kinds of situation, right? So I'm going to show the correct answer here. Of course, it's the first three, not the last one. The last one, it's if you've been keeping up with Korean shows, there's a lot of charismatic doctors, but no. It's good to have doctors who can communicate well with the patients, reassure the patients, but definitely training is these three. Now, the other thing, it's one of the complaints I used to hear when I was in the hospital, was that the training sessions can be really long. It can be half a day, and then you have lunch break, and then it goes on to tea time, and this is something that AhaSlides can help you with, which is to make the training session more fun, right? So here you have a quiz, so you can start a quiz, and this could be serious topics. It could be used for reinforcing the what you shared, or it could be something light and fun, like a trivia, right? So once everyone is in, you can start the quiz, and now there is a sort of like an excitement element. Well, technically this is not the exciting topic, but yeah, it creates a sense of competition. So our polls, so this is a pick answer slide type, and what you can do is you can set a time, you can add correct answers, and you can also have a leaderboard. Most of those functions I've removed for this presentation, but yeah, so these are, for example, this is a medical quiz, and Yeah, so which of these three could be symptoms of eczema, right? So I'm going to end the quiz, and the correct answer is the first one, right? So um, one thing about AHA slides in any training session, not just for the medical sector, but also for other sectors, right? The pick answer where you have your leaderboard. So any of the slide types that has a leaderboard contributes to the score, and then you can see the score at the end, and it becomes a very useful tool to create a bit more life and activity. Um, so yeah, so today's session it's going to be shorter than usual, um, because this is quite narrow. And to be honest with you, I'm not a, I mean, that was 10 years ago since I was in the medical healthcare industry. So I'm definitely not the expert to comment more about how the medical healthcare industry can improve or should improve. The whole purpose was just to share how AHA slides can be useful for the medical sector, right? So yeah, so I hope this has been pretty useful. So per usual, for those of you who are joining in post live, right? So you can still go on to this link over here, ahaslides.com/aha web 5, and you can participate and see for yourself how the interactivity works, right? And if you have any questions or you want us to cover on any other topics, right, feel free to input in the last slide, which is this slide. Ask me anything, and we'll definitely review it, and we will try to come up with more webinar topics that addresses some of these questions here. Right. So with that, I'm definitely going to end this session to this week. Next week, I have one of our wonderful colleagues, Lawrence, who's going to be joining us. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about fun activities that we can do with AHA Slides. So, yeah, so wishing you guys a happy evening or a great day ahead if you're in the US time zone on the other side. And hope to see you again on the next session. Take care, guys.